Welcome to another episode of Mining Now. I am your host, Jared Downey. Mining Now focuses on the mining of today that will shape the mines of tomorrow. It is a production brought to you by CIM in co-production with Crownsman. For more information about CIM membership, go to CIM.org. For more information about Crownsman Productions, go to crownsman.com. Our guest today is Dr. Frank Oboni, and he is the president of Riskope. Good morning, Franco.
Good
how
morning,
are you?
Jared? Excellent, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, and I'm excited to have you on the show. We've done a lot of prep to get a very technical topic compressed into a 20-minute interview. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we do. Yeah.
Please forgive my haircut, but as you know, I'm transformed in a caveman because of COVID-19. So.
I'm relying on a lot of gel right now. It's all pushed into the back.
All right. Excellent.
I want to just, I think what Riskope, it identifies, quantifies, prioritizes enterprise risks. Now, that sounds very good, and I need you to just kick off for the audience. I think it's really key in this interview that we're not going to assume people know certain terminology and what you do. So I just want initially for you to walk us through it. And I think we should start with the big picture. What is your mission at Riskope?
Okay, yeah, sure. Our mission at Riskope is basically to make companies and governments, we have some governmental agencies as clients, have a better future. And a better future means having a more sustainable future, and the more sustainable futures comes from understanding the risks that lie ahead. Quantify them, so know how bad they can be, how much they can hurt, and then be able to prioritize them so that they can allow capital expenditures and ongoing mitigation expenditures. That's basically what we do. Now,
and how do you do that?
Okay, risk is a strange beast. It looks simple, but it isn't. So let me explain to you this. Risk is made of two components. One is the probability of occurrence of a nefarious event. It could be a hurricane, it could be an epidemic, it could be a tailings dam failing. And the other element of risk is the consequence of that event. So now the consequences are a very complex function of many dimensions. There is harm to humans. There is harm to the environment. There is harm to the corporation or the agency itself, as they may lose business or they may lose credibility. And there is a dimension, of course, of legal consequences and reputation and so forth. So when we evaluate risk, we evaluate the probability of failure, the probability of occurrence of different scenarios, and we pair that probability with the consequences of these scenarios. Once you have done that, if you can put together, and we will see examples later, the tolerance to risk, which can be in itself double, there is a societal tolerance and there is a corporate tolerance, then you know exactly which risks are going to hurt you and your organizations, and therefore you can develop a roadmap to sustainability, hopefully indefinite sustainability. That's what we do, and that's how we do it.
So it's not just about eliminating risks, because there is always some risk. It is also about assessing which risks to take and how to take them correctly, or as correct as you possibly can.
With the available data at the time of your study. That's why in risk, nothing is written in stone. Situations can be very fluid, as you know. It is necessary to constantly update risk assessments. It is not something you do, you put on a shelf and you forget about it. Updates are extremely important. And it is very, very important to keep a constant eye on emerging issues. That's where people get caught.
So right now, Franco, we're obviously in a very unique situation, which is why both you and I have longer hair than normal. What can you lay out sort of a tangible example based on what's going on right now of what risk assessment is?
Yeah, sure. Okay. First of all, a situation like the one we are seeing nowadays is again composed of two elements. One element is its likelihood, its probability, and based on 400 years of recent quoted world history, I can tell you that the rate of events of this type is basically between 1 every 30 years, 1 every 50 years, in that range. So that's one element. The other element is the consequence. Now, there have been quarantines since the year 600 in China, and Venice became very adept in 1400, in 1300, to enclose and flatten the curve, to use a term that is used today, when merchant ships were coming in. So we have been doing this forever. Now, the consequence that is occurring now is particular because the whole world has reacted in a certain way, as you know. Now, a risk assessment would be used in this case, and I tell you right away, we haven't done a risk assessment on this. We did a risk assessment in the last economic meltdown in 2008, which was proven to be very successful in terms of prediction, but we haven't done it yet for this. But in this case, we would help a company or a government to decide if it is more rational to accept a certain level of contagion within their group of people, or preserve to a stronger level that contagion, and of course, perhaps undergo more economic damage because the duration of the shutdown would be longer. Now, allow me also to say something is that here time is very important, because if you let contagion, but then you prolong the duration of the crisis, then at the end, your shutdown period will also increase. And so it's a matter of finding an optimum, and the risk assessment done in a certain way, proper way, would then allow to make better decisions.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense the way you're laying it out, and I want to zoom in a little closer now to mining specific. So can you lay out? I mean, in layman's term, which will be very helpful for me, in the mining industry, what's an example of a risk assessment within the industry itself?
Okay, you have a company with many tailings dams. Now everybody is raising arms saying that tailings dams are super hazardous and so forth. A risk assessment allows that company to properly prioritize their portfolio of dams. And they can even extend this to evaluating all the risks throughout their organization, 360 degrees, including logistics, including cyber, including whatever there is, power generation and so forth. And finally, derive from that a sustainable roadmap to mitigation. So we are actually helping our clients to not to squander money by fixing problems that might not be as bad as they look at first sight.
When you just said money, that's when all the listeners perked up. I went, oh, saving money.
Yeah, I mean,
uh, I was going to ask and I think I made an error when we were having the conversation with confusing the word risk with probability, which didn't seem very similar to me, but actually they're quite easy to confuse. Can you unpackage that a little bit within the scope of tailings ponds, risk assessment within the mining,
yes.
the sort of the easy confusion that can happen there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's a very good question. This is a big problem because very often people talk about risk, but they don't really apply a well-defined glossary. So very often in a conversation on in the newspapers, when you open a newspaper, you see, oh, well, risk, risk, risk. But actually, those people are talking only and exclusively about the likelihood or the probability of something to happen. And something could be a dam failing or a pipeline exploding or whatever. Risk is not that. Risk is the combination of that probability with the consequences. So anybody that talks about risk, meaning probability, is only creating confusion. And there is a lot of confusion out there. Let me tell you this. We oftentimes have clients that call us in and they say, look, we have done a risk assessment and we don't know anymore what to do because the results are confusing and misleading very often, which is even worse than confusing. So keeping a proper glossary is fundamental in this business. And it is a very specific glossary that exists and has to be applied.
I want to touch on something quickly because we do want to get into, there's a couple more things I wanted to get into. But at Riskope, are you just doing risk assessment, or are you offering some wider range of services, consulting, things like that?
Yeah, actually, yes. We specialize in quantitative convergent risk assessments. That's for sure the bulk of our business. But we teach courses. I teach at university level MBA courses in risk management. And also we publish a lot. And as a matter of fact, last summer, our book on tailings dams risk assessment.
I saw that.
Came out, yes, by Springer. And absolutely.
So are you the author of that book, or was it a collaborative publication?
We always write four hands with my son, partner, and boss, Cesar Oboni. And we had a cooperation with Henri Breau, who is a guy that I really respect. And he was kind enough to cooperate with us for the parts that are more on the management side, if you want. So it's basically a five-hand book, if we can say that.
It's in keeping with a lot of the work you do in the mining industry. It usually takes a few people.
Exactly.
Going back to the tailings pond, and I always think it's so important. There's going to be a wide range of levels at companies that watch this episode, a wide range of skills and people that understand different aspects of mining. And so I want to go back in a little bit deeper into the tailings pond because, I think probably the best way to do it would actually just show an example of a dam failure. And again, try not to confuse risk with probability. But do you sort of have examples that stand out to you that are good examples of what you're trying to avoid with your risk assessments?
Well, most definitely, anybody in the business has followed the very sad events in Brazil and the very sad event here in BC with Mount Poly. And many have also followed a sort of side events. I say side events because it was not tailings, but it was a hydro dam that occurred in California, and that was the Oroville Dam, which is a kind of special case, but very interesting from a managerial point of view. And we have also followed with a lot of interest the series of dams that failed in Laos last year or 2 years ago, because each one of these failures actually teaches us something. And it is very unfortunate that to this day, there is no uniform way of reporting accidents in the tailings industry, you know. So we have records. We have records of the last 100 and some years that were built painstakingly by other researchers around the world. And those records are unfortunately incomplete and sometimes biased and so forth. Nevertheless, they constitute a huge knowledge base. And we tap into that to benchmark our clients' dams. In other words, we tell our clients if their dams are better or par or worse than the world performance over the last 100 years in terms of likelihood of occurrence or probability of occurrence.
I think this would be a good time to talk a little bit about ore. It's Optimum Risk Estimates. And we've got a graph, and I want to bring that up. And I would just, if you could just walk us through, you know, sort of, I mean, obviously, well, you wrote a book on it, so it could be quite extensive, but just on the base level of what this graph is telling us about the methodology Riskope is using.
Yeah, absolutely. The methodology, as you can see from the graph, is a continuous loop. You start from the top left, where you basically have the data gathering or the knowledge base building block. And that knowledge base nowadays can be performed by using standard procedures, so reports, inspection reports, and so forth, monitoring, but very importantly, and we're really getting specialized in this, integrating space observation in our knowledge base and using it in the risk assessment. We could write a book on space observation applied to risk assessment, so let's skip that. Then in the middle, you have the area where we are actually evaluating consequences, evaluating probabilities, and at the end of this, we distill the risks. If we go farther around the circle or around the rectangle there, then we put together the societal and corporate tolerance for our client, and we put together now the probabilities, the consequences, and the tolerance, and that allows us to determine which risks are intolerable. But not only, it allows us to say that there might be risks that are intolerable and manageable, so it's a matter of injecting money, and there are risks that might be intolerable and unmanageable, and those are the strategic risks actually. And those risks require modification of the system itself.
Right.
Okay. So in the mining industry, we have clients that have changed processes that used very hazardous material to solve a problem linked to strategic risks. Or in the tailings field, it would mean to perhaps remove the population that is downstream of a dam, or build a second level of defense downstream of the main dam. I mean, there is a whole pantry, if you allow me using that term, of ideas and concepts that can be applied in order to solve every single category of risk. So tactical risks, the one that is intolerable and manageable, and strategic risks that are the ones that are intolerable and non-manageable. So at the end of the day, once we have distilled the final results, so all these risks and all their categories, we can actually then support our client in making decisions. And those decisions will then lead to better communication of the risk, environmental protection, risk reduction in general, and so forth. And with that, we are back to square one. And as time progresses, we will have to perform some kind of update of the risk assessment. So basically, that closes the OR loop.
This okay, and I'm very happy you added this in, because by adding I mean sending me the images so I can actually get a visual of this graph. So I want to move. You sent an image, an illustration of a tailings dam, an analysis of one, and I want you to walk it. Can you walk us through? I'm going to bring that up on the screen, and can you just explain what we're looking at in this image?
Okay, first of all, I've given you a cross-section of a dam showing that a dam, it doesn't fail out of one single failure mode as many people think. It's generally a combination of events that may trigger a failure. In this particular case, I'm showing that the pipeline that distributes tailings at the crest of the dam might lead to scouring of the dam itself, and that scouring may lead to erosion, channeling, if it goes undetected, and finally, it can lead to the failure of a dam. This is a phenomenon that has been highlighted by all the last forensic analyses that have clearly shown that it is never one single failure mode that creates a failure. It's always a conjunction of unfortunate, smaller deviations that sometimes deliver the final horrific result that we have seen on the media. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is that the causes of the failure, the potential failure of a dam, start from day one. And when I say day one, I mean the time that the first geologist goes on site and perhaps digs the first borehole. We have seen, and forensic analysis have shown it is true, that very often dams have too short boreholes, or geotechnical and geological and hydrological campaigns are not detailed enough. So the understanding of the site was not enough to support the structure. So causality starts there. And then, of course, there is design that might have oversights, sometimes by human reasons. We will not delve into this. We have written papers on this. They are all on our website. And also then construction, and finally the management. So there is a continuum of causality construction throughout the life of a dam. And that causality goes from nil, when there is no dam and there is no idea of building it, to the full scope of causality, 100% split in families, once the dam is up and running.
Franco, it's very technical, and you've provided some really good graphs that I know I needed some explaining to, and probably could use a lot more. So I just want you, some of these graphs you sent through that we've looked through, if you could just walk the audience through a couple of them as we come to a close of the interview, I think it would be really helpful to just give the audience that sort of close the loop of everything that we've touched on in the show today.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Let's start with a graph that is entitled Dams Summary. It's the graph that has a yellow stripe, horizontal, gray, orange, blue, and then the vertical bars. Okay, so this dam summary graph is a instrument that we use in our dashboard, in our risk dashboard, to explain to clients their situation. What you see here is the main information is the orange horizontal bar, which corresponds to the 100 years benchmarking I was citing before. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, anything that is below that orange bar is a dam that is better in terms of probability of failure than the worldwide portfolio. Anything that is above that is not as good as a worldwide portfolio. And when you get into the yellow top bar, you are in what we call the pre-catastrophic situation. Now, you see
Mm-hmm.
that each dam is defined by a vertical light blue bar. And you might say, why is the bar in some cases longer than in others? And why there is a bar and not a dot? And the reason is very simple. There are uncertainties. And we for ethical reasons and for reliability of our study reasons, we always explicitly convey the level of uncertainty of a dam. So if a dam has a very long bar, it means we know very little. There is an optimistic way that says, oh, the probability could be really low. And this is not a probability we invent. This is a probability we evaluate using ore to tailings, which is our flagship subset of ore specific to tailings dams. So basically, with an image like this, the client, whether he has 10 dams or 15 dams like here, or he has 100 or 1,000, will be able to see where are the bad apples in his basket, in his
Mm-hmm.
dam portfolio. That's in terms of probability. Then the next graph I would like to comment is the pie diagram that you see. It's entitled Intolerable Risk. And that pie diagram is a classic result out of the 15 or 16 dams of this portfolio. It shows that basically there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 dams that are above tolerance, so they have intolerable risks. And it shows that 2 of them have represent 80% of the intolerable risks. This is a classic
Wow.
Pareto 80-20 type of result, and ore to tailings and ore in general systematically shows this. It focuses the attention on stuff that really hurts, that has the potential to really hurt the client. And finally, the last graph I would like to comment is the one that shows explicitly the orange, the yellow line, the yellow curve, which is the corporate client tolerability of this specific client for this specific portfolio, and a bunch of other interesting thresholds, including the societal one that we will not discuss now because we don't have time. But basically, you can see that a refrain that is used a lot lately that says that dams should be qualified by their consequences can be easily disproven, because higher consequences do not necessarily lead to higher risks, because people
Right.
that state that forget that risk is the combination of probability and consequence. So if you have a very, very safe dam, which has very little probability of failure, even if the consequences could be horrific, actually, at the end of the day, its risks is smaller than other dams.
That, I will be honest, Franco, when I first, it's been a while since we've done a Mining Now episode. We were getting some things together, and you're our first guest in 2020. And when I looked at your website, I went, oh, wow, okay. I know nothing about what this is. And, seeing you actually walk through it, and it's just, I think, there will be some people that have watched it that they've either worked with you or they've worked with similar type companies, and they're going to get it. But there's also going to be a large portion of people that you walking through this and actually taking the time to unpackage it, put it in simple terms, giving us real world examples, then zooming into these graphs. I mean, it's just going to be so helpful. It's so good for the mining industry to be sharing this. I mean, Mining Now goes out in public. It's it's not a login to watch. Everybody can access this information now. I really am happy to have you on here talking about this, because I think it's so important, and it is going to make such a difference to people that are trying to understand the mining industry better.
Thank you, and I must say that I'm really touched by your comment, and that's the reason why we do a lot of publications that are freely available from our website. Each week we put out a blog post. Now the last one, or 2 weeks ago, we had over 6,500 readings only on LinkedIn.
Yes, I saw that. It was very popular.
I received a bunch of comments, heartwarming comments from many countries and many people I know. So I think we have to communicate this, and we have to let people know that there are ways to do a better job.
Well, I think, I think this is a good step, and I want to, you mentioned your website, you're active on LinkedIn. We're going to, when we release this, we'll have across the screen where they go. It's just riskope.com. There's just a ton of information that you have on your website there.
Yes, there is. It's our way to give back, if you want, to society.
Mm-hmm.
What we learn, and try to move people away from obsolete and misleading methodologies and approaches.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Franco. Like we said at the beginning of the show, mining now is about looking at the mining of today that'll shape the mines of tomorrow. So we really appreciate you coming on, and hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you, Jared. Very nice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for watching the show, everybody. There is multiple places you can watch Mining Now. Again, go to CIM.org. They have the site, plus they've got membership available, new events. I mean, CIM, it's where our production started, on their trade show floor. Just an amazing organization. So please go to their website and check out. Just even during this time that we're in right now, with things getting shut down and canceled, they found ways to adapt and still offer value to their members. So please go to CIM.org. Of course, Crownsman, we do a lot of production in the heavy industry, so go to crownsman.com. Let us know if we can do anything for you. Again, thank you. Thank you to Franco for coming on and representing Riskope so well, and the industry. And we will see you on the next episode. There are places to follow, subscribe, visit CIM's YouTube channel, Crownsman YouTube channel, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's all there. We'll put all the information up there. Please follow and subscribe, and please support the mining industry. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode of Mining Now.